Hello, everyone. We are just going to let everybody hop on. I see a couple of people have joined. So, and then the man will be here. How are you guys doing today? Hope everything's going well in your land. When you get on, make sure you say hi so we know that you're here. JJ is getting some stuff ready and then he is going to be here. Hey guys, now I see you popping in there. Coach's Pit Barbecue, I understand. I hope that we are helping you guys out a little bit. Hi J plus K and Wayne, and it's so awesome to see some familiar names that are popping in here. Hi Tiffany, I'm well. I hope you are doing well too. Yes, we will be talking about unemployment benefits today. It has been a crazy week. There he is. All right, so the man that you're waiting to see is here, so we're going to get him set up.
Very kind. All right. Well, hey, thanks for tuning in. A couple of things. We just premiered a music video, and it's just for fun. We
hope you all saw it.
Yeah, we were in New York back in October, kicking off the speaking tour, and I was talking to some CPA firms out there, and we went around Wall Street and Times Square and shot video and got people to be involved, and it's been a lot of fun. And we have just been so busy, we really hadn't done anything with it, and we thought this might be a way to do something, have a little fun.
Coach's Barbecue. I heard one person got funds from the PPP program today.
Oh, sweet. That's awesome.
Oh, Nancy Hiller, you were a lifesaver.
Love it, love it. Yeah, Coach's Pit Barbecue, trying to survive. Coach's Pit Barbecue, are you guys doing takeout? Jane K, Wayne, Jay Bryant, Jean, hello. Joel, good afternoon. We got a CPA, hi. Let's see, Tiffany P, doing well. I stayed up all night.
Yes, he's had like 2 hours of sleep, if that.
I shot a bunch of videos because we got some clarification on the self-employment. We got information related to the unemployment. And I came up with some spreadsheets and whatnot. Yeah, and we'll definitely talk about the unemployment. Let's see, we got a couple questions in there. Dora, Nancy, hello. PB, hey. Love the times, yay, love it, Times Square. Let's see. Tiffany P, hey JJ, my hero, I appreciate that. Let's see. Nancy, you're a lifesaver, thank you so much. Sean Knowles. Let's see, I recognize that. Maybe it was just probably someone, but if you're from Oklahoma, hey. And if you're not, hey. Laura, here is what is the draft schedule? CBOA needs it. Okay. And so we'll, hi, thanks for working hard to keep us up to speed. You bet. Thank you, JP. Yes, Gene McIntyre, talking about the self-employed on the unemployment. Lord Nelson, Tiffany P, hey. Are you able to talk about the PPP and if a company that only has independent contractors can apply? We will. Soul Prop, coaches, Mark, J&K, got a question there. Brooke from Mill Creek, Washington. All right. I used to go to, gosh darn it, maybe it was Arnie's or Arnold's. There was a restaurant there. This is in the late 80s. In Mill Creek, and then there's a company down here in Oklahoma City that totally ripped off Mill Creek's like the logo for the neighborhood of Mill Creek, and they made it look like a saw. And I used to feel really lucky. I got to play golf at the Mill Creek Country Club a couple of times. All right. Oh yeah, me was up watching you all night. Thank you, Nancy. Let's see. Diane Beck, hi. North Idaho. Is that where we we couldn't make it.
Yeah, we couldn't make it.
Yeah. So we were out there. Maybe we'll catch you this year. Wow. Yeah. Steve Young, I appreciate it. I'm hooked 3 days in a row. Thanks to Amanda too. Boom. We got Sean's in Georgia. Okay. Jay Bryant. Let's see. I like your jackets. Thank you, Wayne. And then Norman, one person here has indicated that they know someone that got PPP. I got some news on the EIDL that'll be a little bit shocking. And let's see, Tony, thank you. You're welcome. Big thanks to you and Amanda for all the hard work. You bet. Wild, wonderful. Thank you, Josh. Yes, trying hard. Josh knows software for the credible info. Let's see. So we'll get kicked in. Thank you so much for everybody coming on. Good afternoon. Good to see you. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Amanda keeps saying that over there. So, hey, if you haven't subscribed, would really appreciate it. We are enjoying doing this. I'm getting a lot out of it, and with so many changes to come. So let me kick in by just saying that I feel like we've got enough information from different sources, banks, SBA, the question. And even though I've not seen anything specifically indicating the difference between self-employed and an independent contractor, they have basically, and it's almost like, why didn't they tell us this before? But if you're a sole proprietor, the definition of that, the IRS, is you file a Schedule C. So if you file a Schedule C, you don't have to wait till Friday. You can go ahead and do it now. It was actually someone that keyed us into that yesterday, which I appreciate. And I hunted that down, and it was something recent, at least a clarification. And if you actually look at the top of Schedule C, it says sole proprietor. Here's the thing though, at least with my clients, if they're getting 1099, right? If they have a side business, a side gig, we're hearing this term side gig, gig money, or they have, kind of a established, pay employees type traditional business, but they're just doing it on Schedule C. My point is for my clients that we have that, they're all on Schedule C. We don't have a spot where we just put that other income on a line item on the income tax return. Typically, we're taking expenses on there. But I guess if you are, meaning you're reporting this 1099 income, your gig income, not on Schedule C, then I guess you are waiting. But to me, it seems like you're going off that net Schedule C. Not seems. You are going off the net Schedule C, period, the end. I did a marathon of 4 videos. I did a bunch of videos last night, but I did 4 videos related to PPP. They all say PPP right here, PPP, and then the items. And I put together a checklist on jjthecpahelp.com, which you all probably know if you've been on it. And I really appreciate that. You don't provide any information. It's not a funnel. I don't ask for your email address or anything like that. But I've got a PPP documents checklist, a PPP calculation for the sole proprietor and the self-employed, and the independent contractor would be the same as the self-employed. And then, of course, I had the sample profit and loss on there. And then I just ran out of time, but I'm getting ready to upload the employee retention credit. So here's what I came across last night on the employee retention credit for first quarter. Okay, so any wages March 13th through March 31st. And because you're all on here, there was a video I released that my clients are watching. It's public. And you don't have to watch it because we're going to be talking about it here on the live. But anyways, I released it right before we went here. Long story short, you can take advantage of the employee retention tax credit back to wages starting March 13th through March 31st. And when you're looking at the Form 7200, it does indicate, what quarter, but in instructions, it just tells you mark it second quarter. I don't know why they didn't put a first quarter in there, but I think it was because they created that form. And then the SBA, government, IRS decided to come out and go, you know what, we're going to make it retroactive to 3/13 and after. But here's what that employee retention credit covers is that if there is any kind of a government shutdown, local, county, state, whether it's partial, doesn't matter if you're essential, non-essential, if you're less than 50 employees, if the employees are working at home, if you're more than 50 employees, they have to be at home but not working to get the employee retention credit. The employee retention credit is 50% of whatever you pay that individual, max $10,000 per employee. So we know the tax credits that came out of the Coronavirus Tax Relief Act had maximums per day. This does not. What it has is maximum compensation of 10 grand times 50%. Stated another way, it's a maximum of a $5,000 credit per employee. Now check this out, because you actually qualify for what I just said. If there's any kind of shutdown, which we've been in Oklahoma, that happened on March 16th. So March 16th was a Monday. So if I have any clients, or if you had anybody through 3/31 that was paying somebody that was home because of any of that shutdown, partial shutdown, etc., then that employee retention credit I'm talking about comes into play. So even though the law went into play 327, this is retroactive to 313. Now, you will see on the IRS website that it indicates that if you are getting PPP, you can't get the credit. But what's clear on this everywhere that you look is that that is true, but only during your 8-week period of PPP or when you run out, right? So basically, if you're spending government's PPP money, then you're not going to be able to take this employee retention credit, which also means that if you've put application in for PPP and you haven't received the funds yet, you go back to March 13th through whenever you get your funds, the day before you get your funds, and you're able to take that credit. The reason you want to do Form 7200 is that's how you actually get the credit for the amount of this eligible employee wages credit for first quarter, okay? So for first quarter, you fill out the 7200, you fax it in. I looked and looked. I don't see how you get your money other than it just now I'm assuming they're going to send a check. But, this is going to add up quick. I'm talking with the law practice, and before they didn't really qualify for anything, but they sent their staff home, but no one was sick, and just based on no one had kids, so they were just paying the staff, and this will now help them. So I know the IRS answered the question, but they're answering the question for during the PPP. Now, the second provision to that employee retention credit that allows you to qualify is that if your gross receipts are more than a 50% dip from the same period in the prior year, then you're qualifying for the credit during that time period, okay, which is a way to make up things. So let's just fast forward. We're talking about getting your credits up to now, then we have an 8-week period, or when you run out of your PPP money, and then you can take credits after that if sales are down. So we probably know a lot of restaurants will fall into that, unfortunately. Medical practices will, because they're not making any money now. They might be collecting now because of work they did in February and March, but if they're not doing anything in April, then probably their May or their June will be grim. So there's other details to come in terms of, I think, clarifications. The IRS has a couple of simple examples in there, but as well as I do, that's just how they're getting started. Simple examples. Just know this, you or your clients need to go to irs.gov, get that 7200. I've got a video out on it, 2 of them now. You don't have to jump off live, but if you go to the irs.gov, you'll find it, or you can go to the link in my on my YouTube channel. All I'm saying, this is huge right now, right? Because I'm going to talk about the EIDL. There's some really bad news related to that. And I'm going to talk about some minor tweaks on the PPP that have come down since I've been on live last. But the thing to note, I know we're all focused on PPP, and we should be, and EIDL, and we should be, but this is like found money if you or your clients have been paying people while they're out. So think of this, right? So I have a client, we racked up, and their payroll's $20,000 every, payroll period. They paid everybody, they were out, okay? They're getting $10,000 credit. We're going to put in a form 7200, okay? And the IRS is going to send them a $10,000 check, right? Now, I'll just say this and I'll move on to the next one, next subject. But as it relates to the employee retention credit, April 1st and after, you can still send in your 7,200. You can just send them in and send them in and send them in. Or to get the most immediate relief, you reduce down the amount of payroll tax that you're paying in to the IRS based on that credit, just like we do as it relates to the sick leave and the expanded Family Medical Leave Act. And the Family Medical Leave Act and the sick leave are wages April 1 and after. I'm really disappointed on that because I know that we had a lot of issues with our own clients that we're paying people out before April 1. So when this came out, okay, just come across it last night, like before midnight, this is huge because then people were paying people, they're going to be able to get that credit. The next thing I just want to mention on the PPP. So this morning, the SBA added to their guidelines. I haven't been able to go through so Monday was the 6th, and the SBA put out frequently asked questions, and they had 18 of them. And then they came out with frequently asked questions to this morning, the 8th, and it appears they just added 19 and 20. I haven't gone back through. It looks like 1 through 18 are all the same questions. I probably want to double check they didn't change some wording, which I doubt they did. But in number 20, here's the big change, because in the law, if you go to section 1106A3, I believe, it indicates that your eight-week period begins when the loan originates, which is basically when it was approved, right? Long story short, SBA came out this morning and said the 8 weeks will start when the money is received. Okay, so when we receive the PPP money, that's when our 8 weeks start. And then the banks, they made it clear that when they are approved, meaning the customer's approved, they have to give that client their money within 10 days. I talked to a banker this afternoon, and he's basically saying that, people better get their apps in within 10 days of April 3rd, because the government's trying to really compact getting the money into the economy. Now, I just saw before we came in that there's going to be some vote on another $250 billion on COVID-19 disaster relief. I haven't seen what that's going to be allocated to. Let's talk about the EIDL. Completely unofficial. If we were in court, it'd be hearsay, and the SBA would probably object due to hearsay. But on pretty good authority, and I don't want to overstate. This is hearsay, right? But it's pretty good hearsay, or I'm saying pretty reliable. But I'll just say this: if you or anybody that's applied for an EIDL, what would just the last 3 weeks? Is that basically what it was saying? Mm-hmm. So anyways, this is just based on some information that was presented to me. And but if you've applied in the last 3 weeks and you haven't received EIDL, or you haven't received any confirmation or activity on it, I'm going to tell you just to go reapply. If anything, they'll kick out that second application. So if you were doing the EIDL and you've heard nothing and you want to get those funds, then go reapply ASAP. Okay. Now, know this: the way that this really should work, if you didn't get your money on the EIDL and then you're learning how this really kind of rolls out, you get your PPP. I mean, if you just follow what the government says, you get PPP first. You use it, you get it all forgiven. Then you get an EIDL if you need it. When that's exhausted, then you go on unemployment if you qualify at the federal level. That's really how this is supposed to run. The EIDL, getting it concurrently, what it does is not only reduces down the amount that you get in PPP, but it 100% guarantees that the amount of your EIDL that you got, that amount of your PPP will not be forgivable. EIDL, boom, you don't have to pay it back. I'm not saying anything related to that. I'm saying you qualify for 75,000 with PPP, but you already got 10,000 EIDL. You're only going to get 65K from your PPP. That seems obvious. Okay, that seems obvious. But the part that, like, it's almost like we just don't even hear the next sentence I'm getting ready to say is, but the 10 that you got, okay, just take that figure. You only got 65 on the PPP, but even if you work those numbers perfectly, 10,000 of your 65 will not be forgivable. That's why you want to do PPP, EIDL. On the unemployment benefits, on my community service website, so to speak, I have a page for unemployment. I created it a while ago, and I didn't have much to add to it until last night. But if you go to careeronestop.org, so found this last night, just digging and digging and digging, and it's like, where are we going to find this? So careeronestop.org, sponsored by the U.S. Department of Labor. When you go there, I wish I could bring that on the screen here, but anyways, when you go there, there's a green little tab, and it says COVID-19 unemployment insurance info. You click on it, and it says file for unemployment. Then it talks here where then very small, it surprises me. I mean, it should have been a little bigger so people wouldn't miss it, but you then select your state, and then based on what state you're in, that is how, in essence, it sounds like they're actually going to filter the federal money through. Originally, it was going to be through the IRS, and you go to the IRS website and you would apply, and therefore it was quicker, but they are pushing this through the states. So the states are going to have a lot of extra work involved with this. So there's two tier. You can get federal unemployment even if you don't qualify for the state. You can get federal unemployment quicker, meaning immediately, and federal unemployment lasts 13 weeks longer up to than your state benefits, and the federal unemployment can go for 39 weeks. But the thing here is new federal law allows states to extend benefits to self-employed, and then this term gig workers to provide an extra $600 per week as also an additional 13 weeks of benefits. So careeronestop.org, it's in the unemployment tab. As it relates to, let's see, we talked about the EIDL, talked about the unemployment, we talked about the PPP, we talked about the, yeah, so those are all the updates from when I saw you last, and I do have videos on them, but I just thought maybe I tackle those first. So if we have questions about them, then we've already tackled them. So that's the latest.
And just to give you guys a reminder, in case you weren't here yesterday, we're going to answer questions from yesterday's live today. All the questions that are coming through right now, we will answer them tomorrow unless we have time to get to some of them today, which I don't know that we will, because there's a lot of questions from yesterday. So we're just going to rapid fire through these. We hope that you guys subscribe, so that way JJ can continue doing this for you guys. That would mean a lot. So
hey, real quick, Darius, not to answer Darius's question out of turn, right? But I knew there was one other thing about the EIDL that I wanted to address, and Darius just said, hey, what about, is it 10 or 1? So on the EIDL, it was the Massachusetts SBA office that came out with a memo. So they went rogue, I guess. And on there, and I noticed that it's already been updated. It says the same information, but it's been updated from when I originally saw it. But it does indicate that it's 1,000 per employee, and if you have 10 employees, you get 10,000. But we all know that EIDL is supposed to represent other things besides employees. However, since PPP, okay, what they're needing to avoid and control, and I think properly so, is somehow it got sold, for lack of a better word, that you would go to get the EIDL and it was quote unquote in advance on your PPP. And the reason people thought that was, well, you get 10 now, and if you qualify for 75 with the PPP, well, you get 65 of the PPP and you move down the road, boom, you got it in advance. Well, the stinger to that was, yes, that's true on the front side, but on the back side, 10,000 of your PPP wouldn't be forgivable, which I already said. So here's the thing to note, okay? Someone had commented yesterday that they or somebody they know got like 3,200. That's the first time I've ever heard somebody getting applying for the EIDL and didn't get 10K. So there must be something to that. But as I said earlier, if you just got on, if you have applied in the last 3 weeks and you haven't heard anything, I would, at this point, I'd just say, if you've applied and you haven't heard anything, my understanding is that there was a major crash.
Yeah, the system crashed. The
And,
whole SBA system crashed.
Yeah, and I'm not talking about, Monday the SBA went down for 4 hours related to PPP, but that SBA somehow has had a system crash in the last 3 weeks. It's just all been lost, okay? So here's the long story short on that. It does seem like they've moved to 1,000 per employee. So if you're going with the EIDL and you're not doing the PPP, it's probably because you don't have employees, okay? But from the standpoint of the EIDL being for other purposes, it doesn't seem that it's allowing for that. I had a client go through, get it yesterday and ask for gross sales, cost of goods sold. So maybe if you have cost of goods sold, that gets added on to the number of employees, but we've gotten zero guidance on that other than to say, it does seem like they're going with 1,000 per employee.
Are you ready for me? Okay. Harry Siegel, where on the SPA site are notifications and updates posted?
I'm sorry, my son interrupted.
Oh.
Do you need something? I can't come out. Hey. What? Okay, well, text it. I'm sorry, read the question. Sorry about that. I got to take care of my son every once in a while.
Where on the SBA site are notifications and updates posted?
On the SBA? Mm-hmm. Nowhere. Where I'm getting my updates that I've been telling you about is from the banks. And so there are a few articles, like Fortune Magazine or Forbes or something, but it's not anywhere. When I go to the SBA website, like I've gone through everything, I'm looking for updates. Maybe someone knows the secret code of where to go, but I've tried to go through every tunnel. Now, I will tell you this, if you go to my website, and remember, I don't know who you are. It's not a ploy to get your email address, but I have on there the SBA guidance related to PPP that came out on 4.3, the frequently asked questions that came out on 4.6, and I just haven't had time to get the ones that came up on 4.8, but it looks as though that were just 2 questions added. And then on anything related to SBA, though, related to EIDL, other than that bulletin that came out, and there's very little information on the SBA.gov website, as in basically none. I found nowhere that it talks about the calculation of the EIDL.
The building center, I hear you that you're having a hard time hearing me, so I'll talk a little louder. This is from Brandon Christie. Is there a way to check the status of a disaster loan application after you submit your application?
You think I'm on the right microphone?
Is there a way to check your application once you have submitted it?
There's not. When you submit on the you're talking about EIDL?
The disaster loan application.
Yeah. Okay. So EIDL. You get a confirmation number or tracking number, and there's a number here, and then there was another number up here. So I told my client take a picture of both. But I've never known where you can then go back to the website, put in your tracking number, see the status. You're supposed to get an email. So that's why I'm saying if you haven't got an email, I'd just go in and reapply. Just put the info in, because clearly you're supposed to have your money within about 48 hours.
Thrive Academy is state or local tax assessed on the compensation of employees included in calculating monthly payroll costs.
Yes, and if you go to the text, if you have a bank that's questioning it or whatever, but in 1102 of the CARES Act, in the description of payroll costs. GG says payment of state or local tax assessed on the compensation of employees. So yes, the federal is not included, but the state is.
Marine S, thank you very much for all the videos.
Welcome.
If I have an S Corp with no payroll, getting K1 and paying taxes from my personal 1040, which loan would be best to apply for?
So unfortunately on that, the wages are all that would count up at the S Corp level. And so if you don't have any wages, then obviously you wouldn't be able to do the PPP. Then down at the individual level, the K1 that you get, it is by statute considered investment income. Okay, so it's not earned income, it's not self-employment income. That's by statute, and that rule's been around forever. So at the individual level, because you don't have self-employment income, none of it's going to apply. I hate to say it. So the EIDL would be your option. Or if you're not going to be able to get much on EIDL, give it a whirl on the federal unemployment benefits. I will just note that that is different for those that have a partnership. So with a partnership, you can't pay yourself a wage. If you have box 14 or box 4, which is guaranteed payments and self-employment earnings, then you're in a circumstance where you're going to be able to qualify, but it's because you have self-employment earnings. And the reason I'm going through that full explanation is that when you're looking at self-employment income, the reason that it's going to qualify is that in essence, it is subject to the same taxes as payroll is, right? So when you get paid, or when you pay an employee, 7.65 of Social Security Medicare is withheld, 7.65 of Social Security Medicare is matched, 15.3% altogether. So if down at the individual level, you have that 15.3% on your self-employment income, you're now in the same position as basically payroll, and then that's why you get it. So I hate it, but the S Corp won't work. And it'd really be the same as a C Corp, because we've had questions about that. It just really kind of comes down to the wages.
Stephanie Johnson, independent contractors that only started their work in September 2019, how to come up with income? Only started paying healthcare 2020 and retirement payment part of 2019.
Yeah, great question. And it clearly states, I don't know, it's in 1102, and it does clearly state, I mean, the number one thing they're looking for is that you were in business on February 15th. And so if you were to look, so I want to say it's in E, and I don't want to do a lot of little research, but the short answer is yes. And what you're looking at is basically the time period that you've been in business, in essence. So if you've been in business for 1 month, then you're in a situation where you're going to count that. In fact, it is maximum loan amount. Okay. It's number E, and then in number 2, and maximum loan amount, it's in all caps, but it says, if requested by otherwise eligible recipient that was not in business during the period of February 15th, 19 to June 30, 19, the sum of the product obtaining, multiplying, blah, blah, blah. So it's the average total monthly payments by the applicant for payroll costs incurred during the period beginning on January 1st and ending on February 29th, 2020. So the first thing to note is you have to be in business on February 15th, but if you've been in business before that, then the time period that you take is January 1st of 2020 through February 29th of 2020. So you got to 2 months and extrapolate it. So if you've been in business for a month, then you're not extrapolating. There's your month. If you got the 2 months, you're going to divide that by 2. Now you have your monthly. So that's the same as if you have payroll. That's the same as if you're an independent contractor or self-employed. Now, obviously, you haven't filed a tax return because we can't even yet on any activity in 2020. So this would need to be based on a P&L and probably something to back that up potentially by the bank. But, on the 6th, the SBA came out and did make it clear that it is okay for the banks to just go with what the borrower provided, because at the end of the day, you're responsible, and you will look eyeball to eyeball. You won't be able to have a representative. You will look eyeball to eyeball with a bank examiner to show how you came up with the loan amount and then how you did spend it.
Did you bring up a draft Schedule C?
Oh,
people were asking what that is. So
okay.
I see your question, the building center. Make sure that you guys have subscribed. We do appreciate that you guys are here. And also make sure that if you haven't got to see the video that premiered at 3:45 Central Time, that you go check that out. And if you did see it, let us know what you think of it.
Hey, and we did have some people that emailed us. We may have not had a second to reply. I'm looking up this Schedule C thing that asked for some t-shirts. So
yes,
we'll get some of those out, and I think we only have like 10 left.
Yeah.
From tour. But so when I'm out speaking, I'm looking up this 20 question here. I mean, Schedule C. So if you caught us on tour, we gave out for fun only to crowds that were, not sticks in the mud. We gave out these t-shirts, and maybe we'll show one tomorrow. So help me understand the draft Schedule C. So what I had indicated was that you would just go to irs.gov. So let's just say your accountant or whoever's helping you with your taxes, CPA, EA, they're out, they're closed. They're not going to be able to help you, and not because they're being mean, right? They just aren't. So in a pinch, and I've never recommended it in nearly 28 years, but in a pinch, if the bank is literally needing a Schedule C to check a box to say, hey, you have a Schedule C, then put together your P&L, present it, okay? If they're wanting a Schedule C, then you're trying to put a fire out at your house, okay? So there's not time to run around the corner and find your accountant and knock on their door and explain your circumstances and why you need them to help you and you need this money and you're running out of money and all that good stuff. Your house is on fire. So what are you going to do? You're going to make shift and get that hose and piece it together, even though you've never done anything with a hose ever in your life. What I'm trying to say to you is it's fine, in my opinion, to grab that Schedule C off the IRS website. You can let your banker know. Just say, hey, I've taken my numbers from the P&L. I've put it on the Schedule C. If a bank wants to check a box that they had a Schedule C, they're going to base it on line 31. You do want it to be what you think is going to be reported on the tax return. So I'm just saying those that are in the massive dire straits and they are in a panic to get this money, that was a makeshift, you're in the middle of the forest, there's no doctor around. And I'm saying, let's go ahead and grab that thread and yarn, and let's go ahead and sew up this wound. Well, you'd never do that otherwise. It's just all that we got is some yarn and a fishing hook, and you got a gash. So what are we going to do? We're going to make do with what we got. That's where we're at right now, is survival times. If your CPA or EA or whoever can get the Schedule C done, great, but there's no reason to put pressure on them, because at the end of the day, you want them to do it the best for tax purposes, not just to jam something out for PPP. So I think that's what they're referring to.
Yeah, they are. Okay. They're saying that some banks are asking for a draft 2019 Schedule C. Yeah, okay.
Boom, there you go. So that's consistent, yeah.
David Reeves, can you accept the PPP and unemployment compensation, or just one of them?
Yeah, so great question. So you take it in order. You go, if this would be the government's recommended order. PPP when that runs out, EIDL when that runs out, then you go to unemployment. Unemployment being last.
Ross Shea, is it your understanding that as a non-seasonal employee that was in business prior to 2019 that I can choose the January and February 2020 as a look-back period for forgiveness?
Oh, let's see. Well, let me be clear. You wasn't in business in 19, right?
That was in business prior to 2019. It says, is it your understanding that as a non-seasonal employer that was in business prior to 2019 that I can choose the January and February 2020 as a look-back period for forgiveness, unless you left the word out?
I follow now. All right, so that's in section 1106. So we'll look here together. Let's see, treatment of amounts forgiven in 1106. And if we go to, there's going to be a section here that talks about the time period. So reduction based on reduction on number of employees. So this is based on head count. And it talks about the equivalent, etc. And then at the election of the borrower, they can compare it to the average number of full-time employees from the period of February 15th, 19 to January 30, 19, or the average number of full-time equivalent employees per month from January 1st, 2020 to February 29th, 2020. So absolutely, yeah, when you're talking about the head count.
AJ Pardella. Hey, JJ, can you talk about the process for single member LLC for PPP? It says we can apply April 10th. Does that mean we can't go to our bank, parentheses Chase, until then because they're just accepting the normal PPP now?
So if you're filing a Schedule C, at the top of it, it says sole proprietor. So if you're a single member LLC, I bet you, unless you're an S Corp, which I doubt you are because otherwise you would have already been filing. So it was just yesterday that there seemed to be some, magic in the air in finally there being this clarification of, well, what is a sole proprietor? Because on the application at the top, you check a box, independent contractor, self-employed, or sole proprietor. So really what it comes down to is if you're filing a Schedule C, go ahead and submit now. The definition really that comes down to is, well, what's the difference between that and an independent contractor? Independent contractor would be they're getting 1099s and they're just reporting it in essence as other income subject to self-employment tax on the individual return, not doing a Schedule C. And the only reason you file a Schedule C is if you're taking expenses against it, which you should. So again, if you have a Schedule C, I'd just ignore it. I'd mark yourself sole proprietorship because at the top of the Schedule C, it indicates sole proprietorship. Best Rides Texas LLC. JJ, great stuff. Not bad for an Okie.
I love it. All right, Run Bad Poker. I am a solo practitioner who is established as a PLLC. Applied on Saturday for PPP and checked the box for LLC with one employee, parentheses me. Do I need to reapply this Friday or am I already in the system?
So tell me the type of entity, sole proprietor?
Yeah.
Solo
practitioner who is established as a PLLC.
Okay, so if you are established as a PLLC, then most likely you're not filing a Schedule C, although you possibly could. If you are a Schedule C, you can apply now. You could have applied last week. If you're a PLLC and you're an S Corp and you're not a partnership, obviously, because you don't have any partners. So the short answer is you should be in, you should be A-OK. And so I think you're good. I would not reapply. And honestly, you should have heard back from your bank by now if we're talking about the PPP. You say PPP?
Yeah.
Okay.
Larissa Lopez, FAQ. Question number 7. Excluded $100,000 payroll. So a payroll for one employee is $134,000. Is all of excluded, or do we need to include $100,000 and exclude the excess? It says excess, but just wanted clarification.
Yeah, great question, because I've even had some fellow CPAs where we had discussion about it. And here's the long and short of it is the first 100 counts for each employee. And then yes, if it was 134,000, so you would back out the 34,000 only to include the 100,000. Also, what number 7 though makes clear, because this was another discussion point, is that it is strictly the compensation that's limited to the 100. So you get the 100 on that employee, plus the health, plus the retirement benefit, plus the state unemployment tax. I did have a CPA that had thought it was just limited to 100, all those things combined, and that's not the case. And that's what it clearly states in 7. And if you look at 1102 payroll costs include all those things. And then when it talks to below in the law, it says salary up to the 100. And then, what I recommend is that you go with box 5 of the W2, W3, go with box 5. That's the Medicare wages. It's the most pure. If you're looking at a 941, because that's where you're basing it, then you'd go to line 5C, column 1. And it's less work and it's more accurate because box 1 has been reduced for 401k, which you don't need to do for PPP purposes. And then if you're more than a 2% shareholder or you have taxable benefits, box 1 has been increased by such taxable benefits, but chapter 24 of the Internal Revenue Code indicates clearly that those add-ons such as self-employment or more than 2% shareholder insurance is not considered wages subject to withholding. Therefore, it's not wages considered to be includable for PPP, which is a long way of saying if you go with just box 5 or line 5C, all that's been taken care of for you. It's the most pure number. And everywhere that you look elsewhere in terms of what wages count to determine this. So how do you determine the retirement match? Box 5. When you're looking at qualified business income, there are 3 methods, but it really comes down to box 5.
Blake Mello, I subscribe.
Thank you.
I am a single member LLC, claimed a loss for 2019, already filed taxes, gross income $138,000. Do I qualify for PPP?
Well, based on what we know right now and based on what clarifications I feel I came up with, no. So what I think your option is to do the EIDL, which right now, go ahead and put in, what your sales are. If you have cost of goods sold, did he say what kind of business it was? Mm-hmm. If you have cost of goods sold, which typically, that's your direct costs, okay? And then as you're running out of the EIDL, which because you may not get much, then I would be looking at the federal unemployment. Go to the website in case you weren't on. It's careeronestop.org. I got a link on my website, careeronestop.org. You'll see a button for COVID unemployment. Sounds weird, right? To be self-employed and then you're collecting unemployment, but that's what the federal unemployment is. Anyways, you click on that, find your state, go to the state. You should be able to apply because it's now open to self-employed individuals. So that would be the route to go. It's just not going to lead to any, a big shot in the arm money and just be weekly money.
Clay, who's been with us from the very beginning, said he got your book today.
Thank you. Well, I really appreciate that very, very much. Hopefully you like it. I've been told it's a faster read, which is good and positive, and just that's the book there, JJ the CPA here, and I take the top 60 questions of the last 27 years. Only a handful of them have anything to do with tax, but these are the questions I hear over and over related to banking and insurance. So thank you for that. I really, really, really appreciate it. Oh, hey, sorry, Clay. If you haven't emailed us yet, email us and we'll send you a T-shirt. Let us know your size. Thank you.
M. Salazar, Wells Fargo sent me an email putting me on their wait list, but I need to submit my submit my PPP application. Do you know which banks are processing applications now? Yeah.
So don't wait on Wells Fargo. So this, we do not go to SBA, and I wish there was a way to put this on the screen. There's not, is there?
No, I don't think we have the streaming.
Okay. But if you go to SBA.gov, and if there's a way that you can go there now, you click on that top strip that's yellow, and you go down to the, what it's going to say is click here to learn more about available SBA loans. Okay, so we're following a rabbit here. And then you're going to come to what looks like a cartoon, and it has some money with a badge, and it says PPP and a check mark, and it's like cartoon type. So you click on that, and then it says Paycheck Protection Program. So for sure, you don't apply for it on SBA.gov. It actually says apply for the Paycheck Protection Program. My point is that it says right there, find a lender. then you put in your you put in your zip code, and then it will find lenders in your area that are, in essence, accepting these applications. And so I just did that on mine, and this is going to list banks that are involved or doing this. And I see that looks like my local bank must be already done or is not publicly listing. And these are all local banks that have just come up. These are all state local banks. So another way to say that is that I think that's who will be your best bet, is that kind of bank.
This is Raha Rojos. What about if I pay my employees cash? Can I still apply for a PPP loan?
It's just whatever's going to get reported on your W-2. You wouldn't be able to go in and indicate that you're paying cash, because in essence, it needs to be, no matter how you're paying your employees, it needs to be on the W-2. So if you were paying cash and then it got thrown in on your W-2, then yes. But the long story short, it's only what's going to be on the W-2 period.
TOP, single member LLC, created 3/28/19, filed 2019 taxes for not much income, $14,600, most cash, few checks, no payroll. What can I apply for? EIDL, Express Bridge? I suppose I can't apply for PPP.
So if the 14's the net, until yesterday, I'm going to run a quick little calc here. Yeah, so I mean, your PPP is going to result in 2,900, and your EIDL may only result in a little bit. So I'm going to go totally rogue with you on this by saying that because your income is as low as it is, and that's customary for first year businesses. You got a lot of upfront expenses. You're trying to bring customers in and all that good stuff. So if your net is 14K on a Schedule C single member LLC, assuming if you're an S Corp, you're kind of out of luck on what I'm getting ready to say. This would be if you're a Schedule C. I'd go ahead and apply for the PPP. And then immediately upon getting the money from the PPP, it's going to run out pretty quick. So then I'd just be ready to rock to do the EIDL. And then when that runs out, then if you're still in these circumstances, then do the federal unemployment. So I'm saying do all three, just PPP. And if you're going to get hassled about it, then just put PPP on hold, get the EIDL. When that money runs out, then go over and do the PPP. See it,
RV. I applied for the EIDL in hopes to get the $10,000 grant. I have heard nothing back on that. Can I apply for the PPP in case that grant never goes through?
Yeah, if you qualify for the PPP, whether it's wages or you have net income, I'm not any official source, but if your application's been lost at the EIDL, you're now basically kind of back to the beginning. So what I would do is take whatever your net is, if it's self-employed, divided by 12 times 2.5. Make sure you're including in that figure. And I've got a couple of videos on this where I literally bring up on screen the Schedule C, the Schedule 1. I've got a checklist. I have worksheets all on jjthecpahelp.com. But long story short, you pull all your expenses together, okay? Divided by 12 times 2.5. What's that figure? And then here's what I think you're going to get on the EIDL based on the Massachusetts bulletin that came out 2 days ago, which is not as official as if the national SBA came out with it. But you're going to probably get $1,000 or $2,000 on the EIDL. Go just do the PPP. If it's been a while, do the PPP. And then when you get those funds from PPP, keep a close eye. And then when you're running out of those, try for the EIDL again.
Shazad, I'm telling self-employed clients to use their gross figures on their 1099 forms or total of for PPP payroll costs. What are your thoughts on that?
I say go for it, because if somebody is an independent contractor or self-employed, and they're getting 1099s, my interpretation is you walk in and go, here are my 1099s. Now, that seems kind of inconsistent, because you can be a sole proprietor and you receive 1099s, but as a sole proprietor, you're going by the net. So if you have filed a Schedule C, it's the net. So I would just say, how has that client been filing it? If they filed a Schedule C, it's going to be on the net. If they've not been filing a Schedule C, they're just then reporting that 1099 income. It'll be based on the 1099. So if you have that client and they've got, basically everything they get on a 1099, have them go to the bank and say, I'm an independent contractor, check the box. I don't take any expenses. I don't have a Schedule C. Here's my 1099s. Now it does seem a little unfair because, they're getting it based on the gross, but at the same time, they've been paying tax on the gross, where the Schedule C has just been paying tax on the net.
Brian McClemmons, thank you for all your help. The bank approved today.
Oh, nice.
Said might have on Thursday this week. JJ the CPA is the little guy's guy.
I love it. Well, congratulations to that. I hope you get that much needed relief. And then I'll be doing videos next week, and then probably be switching where when we go live, we'll probably have a lot of questions about the forgiveness and the tracking and all that good stuff. So all I just say in the beginning is I did do a couple of videos, check them out, that talk about the tracking, but I say you go old school, right? Print out and have check copies as well as the receipts and invoices, because you are going to have to sit in front of a bank examiner to substantiate your expenses.
Marcos, I'm a realtor. I have no LLC or even a business account. I also have no employees for payroll. Do I qualify for the PPP?
If you, I'm going to say yes, because those that are like you that I work with, their income goes on Schedule C. So it doesn't matter if they're an LLC, doesn't matter if they're formalized. Commissions are included. It specifically states in 1102, the payroll cost definition. And so you're getting commissions. It goes on Schedule C. You may have some expenses that offsets it, probably a lot of mileage. And then whatever your net is, you qualify for, and you're a sole proprietor, right? Because you're filing a Schedule C. So you don't need to wait till April 10th. I'd get a hold of the bank and then go in with your Schedule C.
Camilo Ruin, Q1 2020 Form 941S won't be filed by my payroll provider until mid-month. Mm-hmm. Do you think that most banks will take the numbers from the payroll provider even though it's not filed yet?
The short answer is yes, because on the frequently asked questions that came out, it does talk about indirectly related to those that have a PEO that's doing the wages, and they indicated that if they can receive documentation from the PEO of what those wages are, and in essence the PEO, it's question 10. If you go to jjthecpahelp.com, get ready to sneeze.
Bless you.
If you go to jjthecpahelp.com, you'll find the frequently asked questions from April 6th and go to question 10. So it's not directly what you're saying, but it's indirectly because it's indicating that the payroll company can provide that. So even though they're not a PEO, it's your payroll company. I do believe they would be able to go by the figures. The one thing that you might consider is just to ask them, can they not just fast track it? So the payroll company we worked with, I made arrangements with them, on the 26th of March. I said, hey, April 1, we need all of these taken care of, because they already have the figures. Now, don't get me wrong, there's work to it. But then if your bank says, no, we're going to need the 941, you can base this off 2019, because if you need to get the money, you need to get the money. Hopefully that doesn't cause you to get less, but then you would use your 941s, but the banks seem to just really be using the W-3, go with box 5.
Damian Stevens, who's on live chat, but he says, thank you for all your help. I shared your information to my family across Kansas. My uncle and parents got approved today.
Oh, awesome.
Still waiting on mine. You rock.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. And congrats. Much needed relief coming. I think we're going to all be starting to, in the business community, small business, sole proprietor, independent contractor, self-employed, whether we own an S or a C or a partnership. I think we're going to start feeling some sense of relief next week, just knowing that there's some money coming in the door.
No, that says that you should run for president.
Well, I appreciate that. You know, when I was coming out of high school, that's what my goal was. And then at age 25, I realized I should just start my own CPA practice. So,
Gene McIntyre, for a single member LLC, does it matter what number comes from the profit loss? For example, $100 yearly, but expenses are, or $100,000 yearly, but expenses are $82,000 in order to apply for the PPP.
Yeah. So if you're going Schedule C, it'll be line 31 of the Schedule C, which is simply the net income that you're going to be looking at. I guess I closed it out, but it is on the net.
Matthew Conrad, JJ, this is your CPA friend from Pennsylvania.
Love it.
I spoke to banks today, which was yesterday, and they want a partnership 1065 to file the APP for the SE income, not GP, not to file personally, as the 1065 must distribute for forgiving. So that's just
okay. Interesting. So what I'm hearing is the banks have said that they want a 1065 to see the self-employment, but then that's getting included.
They want a partnership 1065 to file the APP for the self-employment income and GP, not to file personally, as the 1065 must distribute for forgiving.
Gotcha. Interesting. Okay. Well, I've not seen anything official on that. It definitely makes sense. I talked about it yesterday, that it'll be interesting to see, which way does it go. It makes sense because I've seen banks that they're doing that on the guaranteed payments, where whatever the guaranteed payments are, it's getting wrapped up into the payroll costs. The banks are the one that they kind of hold all the cards right now, but at the same time, this as well as I do, that, the client's the one that's responsible for whatever does occur.
Steve Young says, breaking news, JJ crashes the SBA website.
Well, hopefully they're not on their way to
Come get you.
To come get me, because I'm definitely not talking, I don't want to talk ill of the SBA. I know that they're working very hard.
Liam Doe, do I pay any expense during 8 weeks period of time? Some payment is already made except payroll and rent.
So, during the 8 weeks, as of this morning, the SBA made it clear that the 8 weeks starts when your money is received, and the banks have 10 days to fund within the date of approval. And the only expenses, if I'm understanding the question, that are going to count is what literally is paid in those 56-day window. That's why you need to have check copies to show when you paid the expenses. And then of course it is the payroll, the retirement plan match, the health insurance, which depending on what bank you go to, it seems logical that it would include eye and dental, as well as the utilities, which would include telephone and internet, and then any interest on business loans that are in that business name, and then the rent. So those would be the only things that count. And there was a question in this frequently asked questions that they updated today. And let me see if I can bring up the one that's on the 8th while we're sitting here. I just have so many things open here. This is worth the wait. Hang on just a second.
While you're waiting, make sure that you have subscribed if you were here. We really would appreciate that. It helps us to bring more content to you guys. So make sure you are subscribing.
Yes, thank you. So in the frequently asked questions that came out this morning, they specifically asked, or the frequently asked question was, I'm just going to read it. This is the one that's, fresh off the press. The amount of forgiveness of PPP loan depends on the borrower's payroll costs over 8-week period. When does the 8-week period begin? The 8-week period begins, this is the answer on the date, The lender makes the first disbursement of the PPP loan to the borrower. The lender must make the first disbursement of the loan no later than 10 calendar days from the date of loan approval. The only reason I'm saying that is it says the payroll costs over the 8-week period. So what'll be interesting, because we don't have any clarification here, okay? Well, is it the 8-week period? But my 8 weeks ended on day 56. I pay the employees on day 57. Am I out of luck? When I read this, and I'm having to read between the lines here, and we do have some time to figure this out, but what I'm reading through the lines here is it depends on the payroll costs over the 8-week period. So my understanding is on all of it is you have to pay it in the 8 weeks. Related to the payroll, is there going to be some exception for what I just indicated? And or we had someone ask yesterday, hey, should we wait for payroll? And the payroll includes a period of time before our 8 weeks. Would it be included? Short answer is not sure, but wait for the PPP money to arrive, run that payroll. But it very well may be that it's not on the payroll only what was paid during, but what was in essence incurred, but of course eventually paid.
Robert of Philadelphia Salons, PPP question.
Philadelphia Salons, they're 3 days in a row.
Yeah, I have part-time employees looking at federal unemployment of $600 plus Florida $275 for 4 months. That's more than $35 an hour. It's more than I paid them. PPP can't compete with that. Is that correct?
I would agree. If they're able to get more than what PPP would provide, then I'd put them on furlough, which means that the employee knows they're going to come back. The state knows they're going to come back. Typically, that's a 8-week window in most states. And when they go apply, though, most of what I've read, it is $600 a week federal unemployment, but most of the time unemployment is up to $600, would be my thought. But it does seem like everywhere I read, it just says $600 per week, $600 per week. So the only thing that I'd probably just double, triple check is that they don't go that route. And it turns out based on what they make, the federal amount's really $450 or something to that effect. But here's why I would say in those circumstances that unemployment might be your better option is that we are uncertain. And then you being in the business, the salon business, where you have to touch your customer, right? You might be out longer than other businesses because of all the obvious reasons for that. And the uncertainty that we're dealing with right now is what if we don't open up in that 8-week period? So should we hold some money aside for when we do open up for payroll? So long story short, I think you're taking on less risk as the owner by letting that happen. Now, know this, you're not going to be able to get any funds, of course, for rent and utilities. So you have to kind of gauge, not to play the system, but remember this, you could put in for the PPP, okay? Now you wouldn't be able to lay off your employees and then sign off on that PPP because it indicates that you're going to pay your employees. But hear me on this one. So if you were to put in an application for PPP based on what you qualify for, when you get those monies, you can use up to 25% of it for the things that are not payroll, okay? And that's rent, utilities, and mortgage interest, telephone, internet, okay? In the 75% includes the insurance and whatnot. So you would then have money to pay for their health insurance because if they're on furlough, you would continue to potentially do that. And then if you don't open back up, which hopefully that will not be the case, and you end and you're like, well, I got the money, I spent it on what I could, and now I'm left with this right here because it didn't go towards payroll. Then you just hand it right back. You can just say, hey, here you go. You don't need a loan for it. I'm just going to go ahead and give you this back. So that's a long strategy, but that'd probably be my recommendation is,
Stephanie C., we funded yesterday.
Oh, nice.
Would not have happened happened without access to your videos and information.
Yay.
Thank you so much. You're the best.
Well,
That's
yay.
a live comment that just happened.
Yay. Well, congratulations.
Yes.
Much well-deserved relief and support. I hope you feel good. Sleep better tonight. You deserve it. And thank you so much. And I'm glad that it helped. Makes it all worth it.
J.A. Law, can you use the PPP money for accounts payable, including IRS payables?
No, all it can count for is expenses that you're in essence incurring during the 8-week period, which then of course are limited to rent, utilities, the match, the health insurance, the interest on specific business loans in the name of that business, then of course the payroll and state unemployment tax. If it's back pay, that's not going to count. It needs to be, like when you're looking at the lease and the utilities and what you're paying your employees. When you look in the law, it's basically what was in play February 15th. So that's what's going to count as well. That's a little bit in addition to what you're asking, but the AP will not count. So Clay, I'm just noticing, but said Trump added $250 billion to PPP. I think that that the Senate has to still add it and vote for it, so to speak. But if Trump's saying he's for it and the Senate and House are saying that it's probably going to happen, so premature, so premature.
Robert at Philadelphia Salons is on live, and he said, awesome. Thank you for the input.
Yeah, you're welcome, and good luck with that decision. It's a tough one, and I know that you've asked questions over the last week or so, and I've been answering them. So I know that you have a heart of gold. So just make sure your employees know that you're looking out for their best option. And if you forego getting PPP money for yourself altogether, let them know obviously in a positive way. But I just want to make sure your employees know how much you care for them, and I'm sure they do, because it's big decisions and you're wearing a lot on your shoulders.
And here's a question you haven't really been asked. Dudley Beatty, any small advice for small churches for EIDL or PPP?
Yeah, so the PPP definitely includes the church, and basically it's the true payroll. One of the questions we had on Monday is if you have a minister, does the housing allowance get included? When I was looking through the Schedule SC last night, I do think it gets included, just as an FYI, because it is something that's potentially picked up as income, and it's subject to self-employment tax, and that's really the biggest indicator of what gets to be included here. But then on the EIDL, based on where it is now, I believe nonprofits qualify. I'm drawing a blank on that, but I would probably go with the PPP, and then once that is exhausted, then you might look at going to the EIDL, because the EIDL seems like it's having some issues right now. And I'm on the SBA website real quick, and I thought for sure I saw something in here specifically related to nonprofits. I'll know here in about 30 seconds if let's see.
Make sure you guys are hitting the like buttons and giving thumbs up, and make sure that if you are on Facebook that you share this video with your friends and family and other business associates or clients even, and make sure that you are subscribed.
Yes, thank you.
I feel like I'm giving commercial breaks while he looks up stuff.
I love it. Okay, yeah, right here I knew there was a special section. So if you go to sba.gov and click at the top and then go to the bottom, and there's funding questions, and then there's a very specific one. It says FAQ regarding participation of faith-based organizations in PPP and EIDL. And so I haven't reviewed it, but if you go to that, there's a really nice, looks like 5-page memo to break down all these different questions that many have. So I'm going to refer you to that. I'm going to probably take a look at that tonight, but I would take a look at that in the meantime to see. But PPP all the way. When it runs out, EIDL.
And just a reminder to everyone that's just tuning in, as we have 387 people watching now, so thank you. We are answering questions from yesterday's live, Your questions will be answered tomorrow, and all of the lives will always be available on JJ the CPA's YouTube channel. So if you cannot tune in tomorrow to get your question answered, then it'll be there for you to go back and do a replay. So we are answering yesterday's questions today.
Yeah, so when we went live on Monday, and still taken aback by the response, and I'm glad to help, and I appreciate everybody tuning in. Anyways, on Monday, we went live and we had the questions, and it was hard to keep up with the questions. And then of course people thought maybe their question got missed, and so they put it in there again and again. And you know, when you're putting in the comments and you're scrolling every time a new comment comes in, it moved the thing up. Anyways, we couldn't even get to all the questions on Monday. So what I did was Monday night, I put together a quick little video and I said, hey, I'm going to go live on Tuesday. If you have questions, put them in here and then we'll answer them on Tuesday. So we did that, and I don't even know if we got to all of them. So the only reason I don't want anybody to think, you know, bottom line is we can't even get to these questions because we're still catching up, and I'm trying to make sure we catch everybody's questions. So that's why it's kind of just turned into come and ask your questions today. Now your questions might be answered, but then we'll address them tomorrow.
And this is from Akil. Under PPP, payment for the payroll must be made within 8 weeks, or can it be payments made for the period covering the 8 weeks? Example, those who process payroll bi-weekly and then pay the following Friday.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And yeah, look to the FAQs that came out. I'll put that on my site later tonight. But question 20, it's talking about the 8 weeks. It talks about the covered payroll, and you know, from a logistics standpoint, what you're saying is absolutely right, because our understanding strictly is it's what is spent in that 8-week period. But for payroll, we all know that, I mean, you got to get through the 56th day to determine what you owe to then pay in the next payroll period. So I'm going to say, from a practical matter, it's going to be what the payroll is, even if it was paid customarily a few days after the period. I'm going to assume we're going to see some more clearance or clarification on that, and hopefully soon. Kind of almost hinted to it when it was in 20, but I don't think it fully answered our question. So really good one on that. If you really want to play it super safe, then I guess plan on it's what's paid during the period. But the reason I also think it can't be just how it's paid in the period, because you might get your PPP money and then 2 days later you're making payroll for the prior 2 weeks. And I don't think that counts. So I think, long story short, it's going to be what is incurred during that 8-week period. And then as long as it's paid soon thereafter, customarily, then it's probably going to be okay. But pay attention. We'll have to pay close attention to that one.
Boomer Fitness. If the bank is dragging their feet on the PPP and haven't been able to apply, should you apply for the $10,000 EIDL SBA if your payroll 2.5 is $38,000?
Well, you know, if we were on Monday, I'd tell you to do the EIDL because you get more money. But based on where we are now, the EIDL seems to be locked up behind and might only spit out for you a grand or two. So the EIDL wouldn't be the answer. What I would recommend is going to another bank potentially, or just checking it out. I don't know if you were on earlier, but if you go to sba.gov, of course, that's not where you apply. But if you just drill down a little bit by just looking at what are you know, it'll say, what are your options? There's a section in the PPP page on sba.gov that says find lenders. So I would go to that and find a lender. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm never going to advocate, and I know you wouldn't. You want to be upfront with your bank, but you don't need to be upfront with them until you found another bank that's like, we will work with you. Let me look at your documents. This makes sense. We can get this done. And then you would say to that other bank, hey, have you submitted it? No. Okay. Well, I appreciate all the effort, but I got to do this now. So I found another bank to go to. You know, the smaller the state and locals, seem to be easier to work with. And then from the standpoint of the lenders that are SBA lenders, then they're also ready to go. So I know that we sent clients to my good friend, and so he had to make him a client of the bank first. But it was very easy to do that. Here, I'm just going to shift this lighting. Go ahead. And what's the next one?
Sarah K. Husband carries me on his insurance. Can I write off my portion of premiums for taxes in general, and or can I add it to PPP?
What was the first part? Who's paying for it?
Husband carries me on his insurance.
Okay. If I'm going to say the short answer is no on that. And the reason for that is that it has to be paid by the business for it to qualify. And so if you're being carried on your husband's, what that probably means is that he is an employee and he's covering you on his insurance as he's covering you on his insurance as an employee. So that wouldn't count. And then for writing it off purposes, if it's, pre-tax, then it's already been written off. If for some reason it's not pre-tax, you can write it off on Schedule A. If it's not pre-tax, then I think you would be able to. No, I actually think if it's through your spouse's work, it's not going to count as self-employment health insurance. I wouldn't mind if we have a CPA and EA, it's a little bit outside exactly what we're talking about, but it's absolutely related to what we're talking about. I haven't seen anything directly related to that, where if you have insurance, but I will tell you this, if it's pre-tax, there's no way it's going to count. I think any clients that I've had, if the employee is running their health insurance through, typically it's because it's pre-tax. So I'm going to err on the side of saying no, but I'd rather err on the side of saying yes. So let me just say this, because we don't have any clear indication of how it applies to the PPP, maybe ask your bank. And then if you come back with an answer, that'd be good to let us know. Because I hate to say no to things, but I don't feel like that meets the qualifications in terms of this is supposed to be what the business pays for.
Team Guy, hi, I am an Uber driver, but I don't know which way to file for the benefits we are qualified. I filed my 2019 taxes. I owe the IRS, so what can I do for the IRS to get my bank information?
Okay, so sounds like several questions there. One is if you're an Uber driver, so obviously you're not working, you do qualify for federal unemployment. So go to the website that I had indicated, which is careeronestop.org. You definitely qualify. And then if you have filed 19 and you have a Schedule C, you do qualify for the PPP. So you have to kind of pick. Typically the order is PPP, EIDL, and then unemployment. So you're not doing any of that concurrently. And then in terms of you owe a little bit to the IRS for 19 and saying that they don't have your bank account, you'll want to just follow on irs.gov. When you go there, first page, it says economic impact payments. And you're just going to want to keep an eye on that like a hawk. Watch my videos, because as soon as I see that it's available, I'll be letting everybody know. But the IRS is supposed to come up with a way to log in, a portal in essence, to say, hey, my information's changed since when I filed 19, and or you don't have my banking information, so here it is. I thought we would have had that up and available already. It's not, so keep an eye on that.
And Sarah Kay, that you just answered her question on the insurance, and she said, got it, will do.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you.
God's first, then you.
Yeah, they were on yesterday.
JJ, I have two businesses. Can I put them together for PPP?
If you are a sole proprietor, in the sense of you have two Schedule Cs and neither one of them have an EIN, then yes, you would do one under your Social Security number, and in essence, you would go, here's this business and its net, here's this business and its net, combine them, divided by 12 times 2.5. Now, if you have businesses that each have an EIN, then it's clear that you file for each EIN. You're not able to combine the two businesses from any way, shape, or form.
Douglas Delivery. This is Keith C. If you have a situation that your payroll cost average dropped during the 8-week period and was less than 75%, can you still get all your payroll forgiven?
Not all of it, but a lot of it. So it's not an all or nothing. So the key there is to, the 25% that you can spend on other things besides payroll. If you're able to spend on those things, then you're leading to forgiveness at least on that 25%. And then, yes, if it's less than, now the thing to note is that there are a couple of different periods of time to look. So, one of the time of the periods is to look the first couple of months of 2020 compared to that end, and then also last year. So if your business has maybe done a decline, I don't mean you, just in general, but your business has done a decline, they're not going to penalize you if you have less clients at the beginning of this year, or if for whatever reason you had more, I say clients, employees, but you can also compare it to the prior year. Long story short, unfortunately, no, you will have some of it that will not be forgiven.
Steve Reagan, is a SEP retirement contribution eligible for PPP calculation for a sole proprietorship?
Yes, and I was actually surprised by it. If you go to and I'm gonna read this and see if because I want to confirm what I'm reading here, because when I just got so many things open here. Okay, bear with me because it's going to be worth us looking at the answer. And
make sure you're hitting the thumbs up. Make sure that you're liking the video. Make sure you are subscribed and that you're sharing this on Facebook or whatever platform that you want to. We would greatly appreciate that. Absolutely.
Thank you for tuning in. We really appreciate that for sure. Okay, so so this was the guidance that came out Friday the 3rd from the SBA to the banks. So bear with me. I didn't freeze. Payment provision of benefits. Shoot. Well, I really want to find it, but it's consistent with the SEP, which we know goes on Schedule 1 if you're talking about sole proprietor. If it's paid up at the business level, then of course, that's a benefit. But I will say this, I included it with a client when they were doing their calculation yesterday. So I'm going to say yes, and I looked at it specific. I just thought it'd be nice to be able to find it and read it here, but I'm going to say yes.
Jonah Perry, I am an S Corp, and I am the employee of my corporation. I applied for unemployment, PPP, and EDIL. Am I double dipping, and can I use both?
So you're double dipping inadvertently. I don't know if you've received both funds. What I would probably do is, just because you're in the set of circumstances that you are in terms of if you end up with both, is, somehow you're going to have to convince the bank of it. So whatever bank you're getting your PPP with, ask them for guidance on how to document this on the back end. But I did read an article that talked about in those that are in those circumstances, if you can indicate that you did not use that EIDL money until your PPP money had run out, then you should be okay in terms of that not penalizing you. Okay, but they're supposed to cover the same thing, meaning they're both there to provide assistance, but for the same purposes. So that's why there's an amount. Now, if you did the PPP application and indicated that you had applied, then there's probably been a back out of that. But at the same time, whatever you get from EIDL, you've guaranteed yourself that that amount of your PPP won't be forgiven unless, and we have no precedents to go by, unless you can somehow really document and convince the banker, the examiner you're going to be eyeball to eyeball with, that that money that came in on the EIDL, you did not use it until your PPP ran out. But you got to qualify because you are the S Corp owner and you paid yourself wages, and that's really how it's supposed to be designed. So excellent work there.
Omar Martinez filed 945 years I've been in business with PPP. I don't take taxes from employees. We give them 1099s.
Mm-hmm. So when you're looking at that, the short answer is you wouldn't qualify based on payroll because it's only based on payroll. 4.3 and 4.6, the SBA made that as clear as can be. But the net income, if you are a sole proprietorship, you're filing on Schedule C. If you're a partnership and you have self-employment income, you will be able to apply, but it'll be based on your net, not based on payroll because you don't have any.
XP, good afternoon. I have a business cleaning. I have a couple of accounts that I won't be able to do. They stopped to work for the coronavirus. April and May, I won't receive any payments from them. Can I apply for PPP?
Yes, because, well, first of all, PPP won't be contingent on how well your business does or not to apply, not for forgiveness. It's all about, did you have past payroll? Yes, then you're going to get the PPP. If you are self-employed, then yes, you can be able to qualify for the PPP based on your net. So you don't have to even lose any money or lose customers to be able to qualify to get PPP, or it doesn't do anything to affect your forgiveness of that.
Lisa Dearden just says, all of my fellow booth renting hairstylists call me now for advice that I have learned from you.
Awesome. You bet.
Sarah Kay also asked, what about Cabbage or some other online loan service? Have you heard of them participating in PPP?
Specifically to Cabbage, I have not. What I would do is, to be sure, is go to that SBA.gov website, drill down, find the section that talks about PPP, and it'll indicate here, it'll say find lender, and it's like a big tab and it says find lender. So I would go by that, and if they can prove to you that they're an established SBA lender, then that would be fine. I would just be a little leery if you're not familiar with who they are. I've heard of Cabbage, but I'm not sure. I mean, the bank, if there's an institution that messes around on this, they're in massive trouble, right? But at the same time, we know this is a time that many people are unfortunately going to get somehow taken or scammed.
Danny Nugent, I have a nail salon. I applied for my salon. Can I still apply PPP for myself on a separate loan?
Okay, so if your salon had wages and an EIN, and that's what you filed on, then yes, down at the individual level, based on your Schedule C, you would be able to file under your Social Security number.
Joseph Sumner, Schedule C for 2019. Elected S status for 2020, all same employees plus the owner who is now on the payroll. Needed a new EIN for 2020. Any assistance on this quandary would be appreciated.
Well, the only quandary I see there is why you got a new tax ID number. Now it could just be that you scratched the other entity, but the beauty of the S Corp is that you can just take an existing business. Now, there probably was some circumstances that you had to get a new tax ID number, but most of the time with my clients, I've not come across where we've done that. That doesn't mean that it's not a good thing. So don't want to concern you there. I'm just talking out loud. Man, it's not too. I think you're going to run into a trouble. I would talk to the bank, but if you got a new EIN number, the PPP is based on that business. It needs to have been in business on February 15th. So I know it may feel like it's the same business, but if you got a new tax ID number, in essence, you got a new social security number, which means like you gave birth and there's a separate new distinct entity in the eyes of the IRS with this. You might go back and revisit to see, because you haven't filed probably anything. It's probably it's not too late to even put a pause on your Form 941s that are getting ready to be filed. I understand that there could be some nightmare here for the people that, are doing your taxes and doing your payroll, but so what? What I would really try and figure out, and it's fine if you want to email me on this, just in the regarding line, put new ID number S Corp. There really should have been no reason to get the new EIN. And so you need to figure out how you can use the prior EIN, because typically you can just elect for something to be an S, even if it was a partnership, if it was a C Corp, if it was disregarded. If it was a like anything can elect over to be an S Corp. So there must have been another reason for it, and maybe you're just stuck with it, which is also to say, then I think you're just stuck with, well, what wages did you pay this year? Because you can go, well, I paid January 1st to February 29th. That divided by 2, there's your monthly cost. So check with your people. I'm sure that if you got a new tax ID number, there had to have been a reason that I'm not thinking of. But nonetheless, if there wasn't, and it was just, well, we thought we had to get a new tax ID number to be an S Corp, that's not the case. So anyways, don't call your provider or your CPA, EA, and say, oh, I think you did something wrong. Just say, hey, the best thing to do is just blame it on the bank. And because this is absolutely where the question is going to come into play is, I'm getting ready to go to the bank, and my understanding is that I can only go by one EIN. The old EIN has the payroll, the new EIN doesn't. It's like maybe this year. Why did we get a new tax ID number? Can I help explain that to the bank?
Amy Pass. Hi, JJ. Recently subscribed to your channel.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your information you provide. Do you know if an LLC or S Corp owners with ITINS would qualify for the EIDL and PPP loans?
Okay, so wait, hang on. ITNS. Does anybody know what would INTS?
No, ITIN.
Oh, okay, hang on. I want to verify what my understanding is. I want to make sure.
Individual taxpayer identification number.
Well, that's what I thought, because that's typically, you do that because you don't have a social security number. So let me look right here. I'm going to say, go ahead and do it. Go for it. You have an identifying number, which is good. You don't have the social security number, so you do have that. So I'd say go for it. You have a number issued by the IRS. I'm not seeing anything right off the bat that causes any issues related to that.
Michelle K. PPP for self-employed. How works? What is the payment for the self-employed can give himself? Same average payment of 2019?
So yes, self-employed, you take the net Schedule C, divide it by 12 and times 2.5, and then you get it. And then I'm not sure how we substantiate for those sole proprietors how you used it for payroll, because it's to you. I don't know if it's just kind of an automatic, and that then 25% goes to the other expenses. So I am waiting to see, how do you substantiate on the self-employed? But in terms of how much you get, it's going to be based on that net plus the health insurance and retirement benefits divided by 12 times 2.5.
AK Hill, when calculating forgiveness, will that be 75% of average TTM gross earnings or 75% of FTE maintained? We have a hotel where occupancy has dropped.
Yeah, so it's actually both things. They get you coming and going on this. And if we go down to, if you're looking at 1106, and what it's talking about is if you've got rehires, it's talking about reduction related to salary, which is that if you have a reduction of more than 25% in the dollar amount for the most recent full quarter as compared. And then there's also the application of if you're rehiring people, which kind of makes it a ollie oxen free to the extent of the rehires. And then there's another section that talks about the head count. All of this is going to be in 1106 when you're looking at this. And I was just trying to find, okay, exemptions for rehires. And then it does talk about the head count in B. Long story short, it's both things. They look at both things because they're wanting to make sure that you're keeping people employed. And I understand in those circumstances that, you know, you're going to probably end up with more than maybe what you had the payroll for. So I'm optimistic that maybe there'll be a change in how this is calculated, which the change would be that we don't have 8 weeks to use it. Let's say we have 12. I think that'd be more reasonable. When this, in essence, was being created, the CARES Act, you know, the government was indicating that we'd probably all be back to normal come Easter.
William B. just said that he finally got his PPP application submitted to the bank today.
Awesome.
He pretty much answered all of his questions himself, as the answers from the bank was, I'm not sure. So he just went with all your suggestions and let it fly.
Perfect. Love it. And hopefully everything goes great to actually get the funding.
Jenny Kim, my husband works at home as an environmental engineer consultant. Can you claim part of home mortgage and utilities on PPP?
So the jury's out on that. I think at best, what we'd be able to include for those circumstances would be an allocation, which would be very much mirroring the personal or business use of residence, which usually doesn't yield very much. But the official answer is no. It has to be in the business name. So the mortgage and the utilities and et cetera is not. You wouldn't be able to establish now rent to pay to qualify. And I think at the end of the day, when you're looking then at would there be any reprieve, right now just say no, but it could be that there's a minor amount. But I'm telling you, no matter how big or how small the house, it seems like the business use of personal residence deductions usually never more than like $700 or $800. So I don't think it'll be much if it's allocable.
Sarah Kay says she can't believe that there's someone like you that exists. This is all great.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Glad to help.
Robert Hardy, do you add depreciations into net profits for sole proprietors?
You know, I brought that up in one of my videos. It seems logical to me because anytime that a bank provides a loan, when they're determining what's the net income of the business, they add back depreciation. So here's what I'd say, give it a whirl. I would, provide the Schedule C with a statement that indicates here's line 31 and then, depreciation that was deducted. Here's that amount as an add back. This might be a year that you go, well, do I take as much depreciation if it's new assets? So yeah, depreciation can have an effect. See no guidance on it. It does seem, I think it'd be reasonable to a bank to go, yeah, we can add that back because they do it for their purposes, for other lending purposes. So I say add it back, and I think it's proper because you can do it for other lending purposes.
Kim Decker, I work for someone else, plus I have my LLC. I'm the only person for my LLC. Am I eligible for PPP because I also receive a W-2? Yes.
What you'll be eligible for then is what's running through your side business, side gig, your sole proprietorship. What's running through that will qualify. Having W-2 wages as well does not disqualify you.
Han Ju, does rent still included in forgivable part of loan?
Yes, for the period of the 8 weeks.
Dan Kong. I have an LLC since 2011, which was largely dormant in 2019, average $700 a month. Revenue has increased significantly in 2020. As a solo employee, can I use what I take from 2020 revenue for payroll?
Yes. So there's a provision in there that you can go with January 1st, 2020 to February 29th, 2020. So whatever that period of time is that you have numbers, if it was a full 2 months and you take that divided by 2, that'd be your monthly cost.
Raymond Joe Meyer. I have a general partnership with my wife. We don't do W-2. How do we stand with self-employed?
Yeah, so with that, you would look at Schedule SE for starters. If it's a general partnership, then whatever's on that K-1 should have been subject to SE tax, self-employment tax. And so I would look at your Schedule SE, and then whatever's on that, I believe that would be what you'd apply for, and at the individual level. However, we did have someone indicate that there was a bank, I think it was in Pennsylvania, that said they would want you to apply at the partnership level. So I don't know if that's actually the case. It seems like you could go either way, but at the end of the day, yes, you qualify and you should go apply.
JJ Startup. What about the entities that began operating on January 1st, 2020?
Yeah, so you're included as long as you're in business February 15th, and then use your numbers from 1/1/20 to 2/29/20.
Gene Droster. I know you can't get both the PPP and the employee retention credit. What about PPP and the credit for family or sick leave? Can I get both?
Okay, so to break this down, you can get the PPP when it's used, then you get the EIDL. When you're in your period of time for the PPP, you're using the government's money, and so any of the credits that are allowable, you wouldn't be able to take because that payroll is being covered by the government. But outside of the 8-week period, you are able to do the tax credits. So I just did a video, a second one on the employee retention tax credit that came out of the CARES Act, and it is retroactive back to March, starting with wages March 13th or after. And if you have any of those, now that's on the employee retention credit. If you have anything that qualifies in there, which is basically partial or full shutdown, if they're working from home, if you're under 50 employees, it doesn't matter, you get the credit. And then that credit's up to 50%, or it's 50% of the compensation that you paid, maximum 10,000 of compensation per employee, or stated another way, you can pay your employee 10K, they're out, and you get a 50% credit on that 10K, which means you're getting a $5,000 credit. And then when you're looking at any credits, you can't use more than one credit on that specific day. So it's all basically you're using one thing at a time.
Lisa Petrona, my PPP was approved. Give
Nice.
me $600 extra unemployment. No way I can put staff back on payroll until I'm open again. PPP says use money for 8 weeks, but also says that I have until 6/30/20 to get staff on payroll. How does that work?
Yeah, they're going to have to fix this one, and because I've got a number of other clients that are in those circumstances, and what they're going to have to fix is they're going to have to go back to the original Senate version. The Senate version was you had till June 30 to spend this money. Okay. When it went through the House and then became law, it was shortened to the 8 weeks, which doesn't make sense under current conditions. Maybe it made sense when they were making it law, because it's like, well, we don't want anybody to hold on to it. We want to get the money into the economy now. Well, the problem is your circumstances, you don't have payroll. They're going to make or maybe potentially get more on unemployment, like Philadelphia salons. And so it's kind of a double-edged sword. So hear me on this. You have 8 weeks to get it forgiven. If you don't spend in 8 weeks, it's not forgiven. June 30 doesn't matter. Where the June 30 comes into play is, okay, you spend all your money in the 8 weeks, you put it on payroll, okay, and you go, all right, hey, I'm going to get it all forgiven. Okay. But if you go to June 30 and you're doing a head count, you're doing a salary comparison, and you have dropped out or dropped down, then what otherwise was forgivable is going to be partially unforgivable. So that's where that comes into play. You don't spend it, there's no possibility of getting it forgiven.
Hank Hickerson told us yesterday, JJ client just spoke to SBA on EIDL and was told that those who applied will get an email by Sunday outlining how much they will get. Fingers crossed. So
okay.
We'll see.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'd probably say, knowing that information, wait till Sunday. If come Monday you don't have one, then go reapply, because it was our understanding, completely unofficially, but from good source, that unfortunately there were applications lost. So if you don't have an email by Sunday, Monday reapply.
Demir wants to be you whenever he grows up.
Very kind. Well, I want to be you while we both grow up.
FE Pro, I have a full maintenance company and 1099 technicians. I understand now there is no way I qualify for PPP, so I will do EIDL and unemployment.
Yes, but let's be sure on this. If you're a partnership and you have net income that's subject to self-employment tax, you're going to qualify. If you're a sole proprietorship somehow, your net income is subject to self-employment tax, you're going to qualify. Where you're not going to qualify here is if you're an S Corp and you didn't pay yourself any wages. But sole proprietorship and partnership should lead to you being able to get some PPP money.
Joseph Yates, unemployment partial under the loss of our sole proprietors. If we get the PPP and decide just to repay it back, that won't affect our personal ability to apply for unemployment, will it?
The short answer is I'm not 100% sure, but the answer is no. I mean, I don't think it's going to affect it at all. What I'll be curious of is if the states are going to inquire, did you get a PPP, and then are you covered under the PPP? Because of course they're not going to want to pay out unemployment benefits if you've gotten a PPP. So the quandary there though is, how do you pay it back that quickly? Because there's no guidance here, even like how do you pay it back? So I would just say this, if you're going with unemployment, then go with the mindset that you're not going to use the PPP or the EIDL. If that money does come in, then you could at that point go, you know what, I'm going to go off unemployment. I think the key here is do one thing at a time and you probably won't go wrong.
L Porter's Place. JJ, I might have missed it, but can you tell me if a sole proprietor filing 1040 and Schedule C uses gross or net? I work on boats and had to shut down.
Okay, well, sorry to hear that. And you would use the net. Line 31 on your Schedule C is what you're going to base on your max loan on, plus look in Schedule 1 for retirement plans that are related to your business and the health insurance that would be related to your business.
Tiffany Carter, I own a hair salon. How do I average their tips if they get cash? QuickBooks says I have to pay 14 days of sick time plus the normal paycheck.
So if I'm hearing that correctly, only thing that's going to count is what's in the W-2. Okay, so if there's cash tips, but it got reflected in the W-2, then you're good. And there's little provisions about that in the law. But if it was just that you cashed them out and they're responsible for reporting that as income, then you're not going to be able to include any of that. So it's only what was in the W-2. What was the second part of that?
About the tips.
Oh, okay.
QuickBooks says I have to pay 14 days of sick time plus normal paycheck.
Yeah, I mean, I know QuickBooks, has payroll service. I know if you're over 500 employees out of the Families First Coronavirus Act, there's some things you have to do that sound kind of like that. But small businesses are not required to pay out 14 days on anything that I'm aware of.
Let me get some more questions because there's a lot of talking going on this part.
Oh, okay. Are we Are we in today's?
We're getting close to the end of it, yes.
From yesterday's?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, okay.
Sorry guys, I'm trying to, okay. Phoenix Metro Area Homes by Danny Lopez. I have my 1099 for 2019, but have not filed, so I don't have a net Schedule C. You've already covered that.
Well, yeah, so if you filed Schedule C in 18, then you're going to be need to be a Schedule C, and so you'll need to come up with, what are your expenses, so that you're able to come up with line 31 on Schedule C to apply. And so I had recommended, you may have heard it, but put together that P&L. If you go to jjthecpahelp.com, which I don't ask for any information of you, I don't even hint at it, but I've got a sample P&L. Not that you need it, I'm just saying it in general. Use that, and then you can go to irs.gov, get yourself a Schedule C. You can mark it draft, because if the bank's going to be hardcore and say, well, we need that Schedule C, well, then you can put it together, quote unquote, as a draft.
The Italian Pie. How do I claim loan as a franchise if their franchisor is in jail and it had not kept up the agreements in years? Our remaining location franchises have not paid fees in 3 years.
I would just, hopefully you have your own tax ID number. Usually, with franchises, you have a franchise, but you've set up your own entity. And so I don't think that's going to affect you at all. I do know there's some provisions in there related to franchises that I really haven't dived into. But my understanding is when you're looking at franchise, what they're concerned about is there more than 500 employees, but then they break it out by, sectors and how close are they, what's the common ownership. So if you just have a franchise and you have your own ID number and what you own is less than 500 employees all collectively, I say you go for the PPP. You'd be based on, your traditional information.
R. Romeo. I'm a single member LLC for a PPP. Bank is asking for 2019 payroll ledger or applicable document. And document with calculations of average monthly payroll. What documents should I submit for each?
You're gonna have to just read it again.
On a single member LLC.
Okay, single member LLC.
For PPP, bank is asking for 2019 payroll ledger or applicable document.
Okay, hang on. So that would be a Schedule C, because if you're single member LLC, you're not going to have payroll. So that'd be your Schedule C.
And document with calculations of average monthly payroll.
Okay. So, you're not going to have the payroll. If you go to jjthecpahelp.com, that I put on there last night on the PPP. Well, we must have some allergies going. Sorry to keep having to. Anyways, no. It's just on the main website, jjthecpahelp.com. I've got listed there PPP calculation for the sole proprietor, self-employed. So you can use that if they're wanting a calculation. Go to that, which is basically I lay out, and I've even got a video on it where you pull the information, line 31 from Schedule C. You go to Schedule 1, you pull line 15, also line 16. You run it through to be able to, and I provided that as an Excel spreadsheet as well. So go there for the worksheet that they're asking for.
Dora Shaver, sole proprietor with employees. How can I add my net earnings plus the payroll of employees for loan calculation?
Boy, I must be.
He's had 2 hours of sleep, guys, and we're almost done.
Yeah, what time? I don't think I went to sleep till 6:30 a.m.
6:45 this morning.
6:45 a.m. So can you read it again?
Sole proprietor with employees. How can add my net earnings plus the payroll?
Yeah, I hope you're on, because if you go to what I had just indicated as well, in that PPP calculation, sole proprietor, self-employed, and I have a video specific to this. So if you would go to that, I've got a worksheet that shows you how to work that through and a video. But to just quickly answer your question, you're gonna have two calculations. You're gonna say, okay, what is it just based on the payroll that I'm paying to employees? And then what is it based on my self-employment? And then you're gonna come to the bottom and add those together, divided by 12 times 2.5. So you're basically just taking two calcs, and then you would do it, if your Schedule C has an EIN number, then you're gonna do that under your EIN. If your entity does not, or your business does not have an entity number, which it's going to, because you're doing payroll, but I'm just saying, you do one or the other. You will not do two applications. It'll be one.
Derek Spain, if I don't want to use 2018 1040 Schedule C because low profit, can I use 2020 numbers from QuickBooks showing owner pay instead? I'm a sole proprietor with 1099 employee.
Okay. Yeah, you won't be able to use 18 anyways. It's not an option. What you're looking at is, if you've not been in business, you can use 2020 only. But then your option is last 12 months or calendar year 19. So last 12 months would be 4/1/19 through 3/31/2020 based on that, or you look at calendar year. But the only way you can unless your bank just doesn't get it, is if you were not in business in 19, then you can use 1/1/20 through 2/29/20. But since you've been in business, you wouldn't be able to do that.
J plus K, I own an S Corp. My overall income has gone up. We have 3 employees, including myself. Do we qualify for PPP?
Absolutely. All based on the payroll, including the owners. Be sure you're including state unemployment tax, any employer match, as well as the employer paid health insurance. I'd go ahead and throw in dental and vision if you have that as well, because it is in the definition of health benefits, even though a few banks have kicked that out.
Eric, truck driver, would repairs count as rent, mortgage, or repairs to my truck forgivable?
Unfortunately not. And we had a question the other day and I looked at it, but if something's a lease, let's say on a vehicle, that's not going to count for the rent. So unfortunately, all that's going to count is utilities, which you may not have, telephone. So if you have a cell phone, internet, I mean, if you're paying something separate for that, being a truck driver, and then the compensation to yourself, jury's out on how we substantiate that.
We're almost done, and then we will wrap up. If I did happen to skim your question or something, some of them I did start skimming because he's answered it like 4 times, so you can get your information because it's been answered. See, if the loan is deferred for 6 months on a 24-month loan, does that then make it a 30-month loan?
Okay, so it's deferred for 6 to 12 months, and then it's rolled into a 10-year. I don't know that you even have the option to do it for a shorter period of time, but there's no prepayment penalty. So you can always pay more each month, but I've not seen anything that allows you any options. It's just what's not forgiven, it's deferred, boom, it's a 10-year, 1%, done.
Montana 10-box living. How is EIDL amount calculated on real estate when tenants are underpaying or skipping? The damage is being done. Don't know where it will end. $25,000 per month of rental income was less than $10,000 for April.
Well, yeah, sorry for that. Yeah, the landlords, so to speak, are really getting the short end because the government is indicating that you don't have to pay rent. You get a reprieve, but then there's not been anything really provided to real estate entities of any true dollar amount, so to speak. But from the standpoint, I'd say first and foremost, get a hold of your banks and see if they go to interest only for a short period of time. They might even just defer payments on you all the way. And then as it relates to So you're not going to be able to get PPP because you're not self-employed when you have real estate. It's not considered earned or self-employment income. And you don't have wages, of course. And so you really are looking at the EIDL in terms of how is it calculated. Goodness, not having any employees, put your gross in there. You don't have cost of goods sold. And what I would have told you last Friday and before is do that and you'd get 10 grand. But it does seem like they're doing less. So here's what I'd say. Go ahead and put in for the EIDL, put in what your gross rents are. Cost of goods sold doesn't really exist in rental properties. And then give it a whirl. And then I don't think that we have a clear idea of whether or not in that ownership setup, if you would be able to get any unemployment because you're not in earned income territory. You're in investment or even passive income territory. So I wish I had better news on that. It's always good to check with your bank, and it sounds funny, but banks sometimes they're just, they're just missing the boat, and they might miss the boat so far that they are able to help you. But I guess at the end of the day, that wouldn't be good strategy either because you're going to be the one responsible for it. So, well, I was just talking that out by just saying it. Gosh, I wish there was a better answer, but I don't see anything other than the EIDL. So hurry and apply for that. Is that it?
Great show, JJ.
Well, thank you. So 2 hours, 6 minutes. So I guess all the questions that were asked today,
we will answer them tomorrow.
We will answer tomorrow. And, depending on what we might do tomorrow, and it just depends on the amount of time that we have, we might try and group the questions so that if possible, we can say, hey, these 4 people had the similar question, to try and get through these questions still carefully.
Yeah.
But it would be, I would like to get it to where, people that are on were answering their questions.
Yeah. Yes, we would like that too.
So for now, I will be back live tomorrow at 4 p.m. We'll answer the questions that were in there. Maybe I'll think of something between now and then. There's some new stuff that came out. I did already shoot one video on it. I got another video I'm going to be putting out. You should check out, I did this little premiere 3-minute video, just having fun. And I got a song that's on iTunes. It's called JJ the CPA Here, Money Never Sleeps. And, if you have Apple Music, you get it for free. Or you can just listen to the YouTube video. And but nonetheless, got together with someone and we put this together, had a lot of fun. It's old school. And you've never met a CPA quite like me. And that video will tell you that for sure. So, hey, thanks to everybody.
Yes, thank you guys.
All right, you all have a great day. And I'm so glad to start hearing that people are, getting money. So Tony, thank you. Jim and Eric and Zad and Oscar and Juan, thank you. You bet. Stephanie C, Steve Chase, Pokemon, we see you on yesterday, and Maria, thank you so much. Stan Wright, oh gosh darn, Form 7200 says you can't use if you get a small business loan, doesn't PP count, so you don't both, right? Correct, yeah. So on that 7200, look at my video that I released. You can do it pre-PPP and post-PPP. You can't do it during the PPP or during the other. All right, so Sherry and Mike, let's see, thank you. And James and Nancy and Connie and Sherry A and Darkwater, Sean, Prostone, J plus K, what?
I'm just giggling again.
Oh, okay. And Mike and Emmanuel, thank you all so much. I hope to see you all tomorrow. Chris W. Gosh darn, I hopefully didn't miss anybody up here. So, all right. Gosh, I wish we could just keep going. You bet, DJ, Stan, Mike. Yeah, so let's see. You won't, Mike, you won't be able to do 18. No way. You're going to have to put together some drafts and P&Ls. All right. Hey, I appreciate you all. Have a great night. I look forward to seeing those of you that still have your questions to be answered tomorrow. JJ the CPA out. Have a great night.